Hi friends, hello, how are you? Uh, Welcome to Viju Guys Teaching Cafe. This is a short video lecture on the theme how to select research methodology in political science. So friends, this lecture is motivated by a request from one of your classmates in the class WhatsApp group. There was a question regarding how to select a research methodology being raised by one of your friends. So this is an answer to the question. So friends, title of the lecture once more is like this: how to select research methodology. So friends, have you heard about Aleph Shafak? Aleph Shafak is a Turkish-born British storyteller, novelist, academic, activist, journalist, so many distinctions. She wrote a beautiful novel, perhaps you might have heard, titled The 40 Rules of Love. A very interesting novel, beautiful novel. The novel is an interesting portrayal of a middle-aged woman called Ella, who was also a mother in the novel. She was working as an editor to a publishing house. She got this job during her middle age. She was just a housewife before this. So she got a book for appraisal. That was her first assignment in the publishing house. And the book she got for appraisal and editing was called Sweet Blasphemy. And the book Sweet Blasphemy, which she was about to edit, was about the 13th century Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi. So in the narrative, as the editing progressed, Ella, this middle-aged woman, fell in love with the author of the novel. That is how the novel progressed. Aleph Shafak novel, The 40 Rules of Love, progress. Being a mother and a wife in the middle age, she falls in love with someone is unacceptable to human culture, any part of the world. Or in most part of the world, this is unacceptable. So friends, this novel is an emotional portrayal of human conditions in its natural context. So but do you think, as a social science researcher, as a political science researcher, can you study these kinds of emotion of people which are prohibited in our human culture, in our human society? Can you study these kinds of emotions through the skills you have learned from your research classes? Friends, do you think that social science can study this kind of prohibited human emotions and human experiences in a society by way of meeting people, asking questions? With a questionnaire, you have a questionnaire wherein you have so many uncomfortable questions to ask to your respondent. Most of the questions are personal and very private. No, friends, it is not possible simply to do these kinds of researches in social research. Friends, here the respondents will not disclose you their private life, their inner mind, their emotion. So what to do as a researcher? What you should do as a researcher? That's an interesting question. So you have to find out a methodology to undertake these kinds of researches. So methodology is very important to find out data in such a very complicated situation where you have to scan the emotion of people. That's it. invention and creativity in methodology makes you a great researcher. So as we are dealing with the human emotions in social science, feelings and emotions that people never disclose to strangers. So researching social life therefore is not like researching in the physics lab or chemistry lab. Our lab is society. We are dealing with complex human beings. It's very complicated. Social science lab is very complicated because human behavior, human character is unpredictable. So our lab is so much complicated, unlike labs in natural sciences. That's it. There are several examples of researchers, writers, scholars who had invented interesting methodologies to propose better ideas in social researches. There are so many people who had invented some interesting methodologies to scan, to track human problems by using novelty in methodologies they have adopted. I can tell you so many examples. In this lecture, I will tell you 2 examples by which you can be more familiar with how to develop a methodology to undertake a very good social science research. Okay. So, I can tell you about an Indian author, Ira Trivedi. Ira Trivedi had written an interesting book titled India in Love, Marriage and Sexuality in the 21st Century. Friends, this book has a core hypothesis. What is it? Trivedi is telling you that love in the urban spaces are fast subjected to profound changes. What is the change she had noticed? Friends, she was saying that in urban spaces, cross-sex friendship is out of box. In traditional India, cross-sex friendships were not normal. Cross-sex friendships were censored. But now, Ira Trivedi is saying that in 21st century India, cross-sex friendship is out of box. So, traditionally in the Indian culture, people first prefer to marry someone of their opposite gender. Then they have love with each other. And rarely they have sex. And sex is also something very private. They will never talk anything about sex. They will keep mum. Right? Because a sin or a taboo topic in the Indian culture. But now this situation is changed. Ira Trivedi tries to tell this idea in her book. What is it? In urban spaces, young people now first have sex in their cross-sex relationship. Simply they have sex with people. It's like a normal thing, a usual thing, a common thing in their friendship networks. She was saying that. Then they will have love. That is also optional. First sex, then love, and finally the marriage. Earlier it was reversed. Marriage, love and sex. Now sex first, love second, and marriage is just optional thing. If you want to marry, okay, you can, or not. It depends upon you. So she was saying that urban India is experiencing a sexual revolution. Okay. So, but to undertake, friends, this kinds of a very complicated, tough research, you have to be out of box. You have to invent on methodologies. You have to fine-tune a best methodological design which give you so much data by which you can propose interesting theories. So she had to struggle a lot with this topic because methodology is important here. She said that she had invented an interesting methodology to collect data for her book and research. She claims she visited 500 urban spaces in India. She talked to several hundreds of people in the India's urban spaces, to strangers, to shop owners, teenagers, students. She even said about the struggle she had to undertake in order to talk to a secret shop owner who sold pornographic materials. She even confessed in the book that she went to a secret place in the underbelly of Mumbai town where she used to meet a person who sell sex toys for both men and women. How can a lady research on a theme which is sin in India? Look at the methodology. She invented an interesting methodology to research on a complicated theme. So friends, this is one aspect of the complexity of methodology. Ramendra Guha, one of the India's finest non-fiction writers and most paid Indian author, non-fiction author, who shared his experience of researching for his most famous book, India After Gandhi. Guha says that book was said to be not his idea. This book was not his idea, but this book was about contemporary India. That India that developed after Gandhi. So in November 1997, a British publisher he had not heard before contacted him in Bengaluru. The publisher says he had read an essay Guha had published for an Oxford historical journal titled Past and Present, and the publisher said he wanted to meet Guha. His name was Peter Strauss. He ran the famous Picador, that was an imprint of Macmillan. So this publisher had before published several famous writers including V.S. Naipaul. So he was a very interesting, very famous publisher. So the publisher asked Guha, whether Guha consider abandoning all his running projects and write a history of independent India instead. So Guha was totally astonished by this request from the publisher, because Guha think that was beyond all his dream, writing a book about contemporary India, because it's very difficult to write a book about contemporary India, that India after Gandhi. So in India such works were not available also, because contemporary history is very complicated, and as a branch of history, contemporary history has not been evolved as a study area in Indian historiography. So Guha had to therefore to assemble relevant primary materials by his own. There were no material. So Guha visited National Archives in India. He visited Nehru Memorial Museum. There were papers of C. Rajagopalachari, the great friend turned critic of Jawaharlal Nehru, and P.N. Haskar, Indira Gandhi's closest political confidant between 1967 and 1974. So the museum, Nehru Museum, also housed old newspapers through which he tracked major events and controversies. The record of Indian Parliament, as well as runs of the left and the right wing journals that conveyed a flavor and intensity of the many and various political debates of the period. So this archive cum library was a bedrock of his research. But Guha says that he also found interesting and valuable materials in archives elsewhere in India and in United Kingdom. Guha also says that he had even referred to student assignments being presented in prestigious foreign universities which had reference to Gandhi. That's how Guha wrote India After Gandhi, the famous book. So Guha said finally he prepared the first draft of the book to his editor in the Picador. Editor completely rejected. Look, the effort Guha took, but the editor simply rejected it, saying that according to the editor, it has in reference to Gandhi the man. Next time he submitted a revised draft to the editor, and the editor again said there were no references to Gandhi the husband. Every time, friends, Guha submitted the revised draft, the editor used to tell that there were references to Gandhi the philosopher, Gandhi the rebel, Gandhi the man, Gandhi the lover, Gandhi the human being. In the end, when the book was published, Guha himself acknowledged that it was an entirely a different book from the one which Guha started in the beginning. Guha believed that he developed a unique methodology for making a research on contemporary India that chronicled the history of India after Gandhi was died. That's it, friends. You might ask then, what are methodology in political research? Friends, research methodology is all about how a researcher systematically design a study to ensure valid and reliable results that addresses the research aims and objectives. that you have some research aims and objectives, and your methodology addresses that aims and objectives. That's it. A good research methodology includes some important factors. What are them? First, what data to collect. You have to decide in the research methodology what kind of data to collect, the nature of your data, and what data to ignore. Whether you need to have the primary data or whether you need to have the secondary data. That you have to decide in the methodology. Second, in the methodology, you have to tell who to collect it from. That is the source of your data. In research, it is called sampling design. Third, how to collect it. This is called data collection method, that you should have certain tools to collect data, to pick data from the source. And fourth, how to analyze it. This is called data analysis method. There are several methods for analyzing the data you have collected. A combination of all these factors makes your research methodology. In a dissertation or thesis in academic journal articles, you will find a research methodology chapter or research methodology part, a section, which covers the aspects I have just mentioned to you a while ago. Importantly, a good research methodology chapter in a dissertation or thesis explains not just what the methodology is all about, but also explains why you have selected that particular methodology. In other words, friends, the methodology part should justify the design of research you have chosen by showing that the chosen methods and techniques of your research are the best fit for the research aims and objectives you have proposed in the beginning, and will provide valid and reliable results. So you have to it will justify. So a good research methodology provides scientifically sound findings, whereas poor methodology will give you results which cannot be validated. So then what are the types of methodologies in social research? Friends, there are importantly three important types of research methodologies. They are quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methodologies. So this is a bit of oversimplification, but it's a good starting point for further understanding. That is quantitative, qualitative, and mixed. So a qualitative research refers to research which focuses on collecting and analyzing words, written or spoken, and textual data. It can also focus on other softer data points such as your body language, visual elements. It's quite common for qualitative methodology to be used when the research aims and objectives are explanatory in nature. For example, in the case of Ira Trivedi, qualitative methodology will be more fitting because it's a complicated theme and also descriptive. It is not like a questionnaire survey. Her findings are not like a questionnaire survey. For example, a qualitative methodology might be used to understand people's perception about an event that took place or a candidate running for president. So it can be, qualitative methodology can be useful for in these kinds of situations. And whereas quantitative research focuses on measurement and testing using numerical data, statistical data. So quantitative methodology is typically used when the research aims and objectives are confirmatory in nature. For example, a quantitative methodology might be used to measure the relationship between two variables. Example, the personality type and the likelihood to commit a crime. For example, to test a set of hypotheses. For example, I can tell you as example, a relationship between education and employment, relationship between excessive use of mobile and poor social skill, or relationship between violence and unemployment. These kinds of relationship can be tested quantitatively. So the mixed methodology attempts to combine the best elements of both quantitative and qualitative methodologies to integrative perspective and create a rich data picture. Friends, so we have discussed that there are methodology involves so many things. One important thing is that sampling. Friends, in the methodology you will have a picture of the sampling design. Sampling is about deciding who you are going to collect data from. That is your sample. There are many sample options, but there are two important sample options in social research. They are probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sample means that you use a completely random sample from the group of people you are interested in. This is called the population. By using a completely random sample, the results of your study will be generalizable to the entire population. That said, you don't have any judgment on the sample you collect. Non-probably sampling is different. On the other hand, it doesn't use a random sample. Rather, for example, it might involve using a convenient sample, which means you would interview or survey people that you have access to, perhaps your friends, family, or classmates or colleagues, rather than truly using a random sample, which might be difficult also. With non-probably sampling, the results are typically non-generalizable, so you have to narrate the result. Then a good methodology tell about what are the main data collection methods. Your methodology should also tell about what are the methods you are going to use to collect the data. So there are several options for about how to collect data for your study. This can be grouped this way, that interview is an important data collection method which can be structured or unstructured or semi-structured. Then focus group and group interviews you can use. Then survey technique you can use online or physical surveys. Then observation. Then documents and records, case studies. These are important data collection tools you can use through your methodology. The choice of which data collection method you may use depends on your overall research aims and objectives, as well as practicalities and limits to resource. Your methodology finally decides your methods of data collection. That's it. For example, if your research is explanatory in nature, qualitative methods such as interviews and focus group would be the best fit. On the contrary, if your research aim is to measure specific variables or test a hypothesis that violence and education or unemployment and economic prosperity, this kinds of relationship can be done through large-scale surveys that produce large volumes of numerical data, which would be a best fit to your research. Friends, a methodology also talks about what are the main data analysis methods. Data analysis methods can be grouped according to whether the research is quantitative or qualitative. Popular data analysis methods in qualitative research include qualitative content analysis, discourse analysis, narrative analysis, and grounded theory. So, popular data analysis methods in quantitative research is univariate, bivariate, and multivariate analysis, descriptive statistics, means, median, and modes, then inferential statistics such as correlation, regression, structural equation modeling. And again, the choice of which data collection methods you may use depends on your overall research aims and objectives, as well as practicalities and limits to resource. Now the big question, friends. Now you may raise the big question. How you choose a research methodology for your research? So the starting point for developing your research methodology is to take a step backward and look at the big picture of your research before you make a decision on methodology. So the first question you need to ask yourself is whether your research is explanatory or confirmatory in nature, whether your research is quantitative or qualitative, whether it involves data about emotion or about hard facts. Then you can decide which is your methodology. Friends, if your research aims and objectives are primarily explanatory in nature, your research will likely be qualitative. If your research aims and objectives are primarily explanatory in nature, your research will likely be qualitative. And therefore, you might consider qualitative data collection methods such as interviews and observation, and analysis methods such as qualitative content analysis. Think if you want to study why girls drop education and happens to have married young age, the data is tough to collect. Think of which is best methodology then. Conversely, or on the contrary, if your research aims and objectives are looking to measure or test something, that is, they are confirmatory, then your research will quite likely be quantitative in nature, and you might consider quantitative data collection methods, example survey, or analysis, statistical analysis. For example, relationship between student performance and student friendship. You want to study student who had time wasting friendship and uninspiring friendship network perform poorly in career and academics compared to those students who have inspiring friendship network. This can be statistically tested. So you can use quantitative methodology. Friends, designing your research and working out your methodology is a big topic. We will cover it in senior classes. This is just a basic lecture about methodology. So for now, here, however, the key the key from this lecture is that you should always start with your research aim and objectives. What is your aim and what is objective? So you can answer the question, methodology. Every methodological decision will flow from that. Friends, I'm going to wind up this lecture by telling you an important story about Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville has written a very interesting book about America, and this book is titled Democracy in America. This book was said to be one of the best book ever written about America. In early 1830s, the French aristocrat named Alexis de Tocqueville traveled to America on behalf of his government with a mission to better understand American prison system. At this time, Alexis de Tocqueville was traveling throughout USA. America was not at all much a democracy. It was a fledgling democracy, barely half a century old, and many nations looked to America as a bold experiment. So it was an open question as to whether securing liberty and equality by means of a constitution and participatory politics and government is possible. That was a question in those days. And Tocqueville traveled widely in the newly formed American nation, taking detailed notes from the field with observations and insights that only an outsider could have yielded in his study. And he adopted interesting methodologies. His methodologies are very important for a political science student because his work is one of the best political science book ever written by a modern man, a modern writer. He reflected on on almost every aspect of American political life, public lives, speaking to countless number of citizens, observing daily interactions of people, and examining various communities and institutions that made up the new nation called America. Above all, he noted a fierce commitment to personal liberty among the decadents of rugged pioneers who had fought so hard for the American democracy. Friends, his travelogues are very famous, like the travelogues of V.S. Naipaul, who had written about India through a trilogy series. Alexis de Tocqueville has written 4-volume books about America, democracy in America, and the methodology he adopted was interesting. A student of political science who wishes to conduct research in political science should compulsorily read that book, Democracy in America. I hope I was able to raise some doubts, some spark, some confusions in your mind. That was what I expected of this lecture. Friends, thank you. Thank you for watching me. Thank you.